Hey, I'm learning how to count to 3.
Backwards, no less.
Yes.
That's awesome.
It's like 3, 2. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
D
Not
many.
working out so well. Yes, this many.
So
How you
it
doing,
makes
Andrew?
it feel that much more official when you do the countdown, especially when you say 3 and then you do it silently.
Why is that volume coming back through? Stop! 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 Stop!
I don't
Stop!
know. Did you do something wrong?
I clearly did something wrong, but we have like some cool music playing in the background.
Is it Mike?
Oh, I know what that is. You know what that is? Let me do this. I made the mistake of having
over.
the. There we go. Yeah. All right. Good. Same problem as the first time. I had the main window open on YouTube, and I was getting the stuff from a few minutes ago.
Yeah, don't do that again.
Now that's all. This is confusing enough as it is. I don't want to,
Sorry, I'm
mess it
just
up even
boogieing into
more.
my music before I muted it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank
Cool.
you again, Andrew, for your sweet music.
You know what?
Ah,
I still want to go back and tweak it a little bit, maybe make it a little more sophisticated. But hey, it's a good starting groove there.
Yeah. Cool. So welcome all handful of you who have joined us today. Thank you. Please feel free to throw your questions into chat or into Twitter or whatever is convenient for you, and we'll try to get them during the show. So, Andrew, you and I today are going to discuss displays and input devices as our main topic.
Yeah.
Huh?
A wide variety of input types, in fact.
Yes. All sorts of funky stuff. And as a little teaser, I have a big screen behind me, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Because
that's Pete's new toy.
Yeah. Hey, so have you gotten anything cool lately?
I have. I have a new little touchpad. I actually had one of the things I wanted to talk about was something I got a while back. I've actually had it for probably almost 2 years now, but it may be one of the single most useful gadgets that I own. Because you know that I do demos of both, phone type demos. So like, doing Windows Phone development, and I want to show what's on the actual hardware. And then also like micro framework stuff where I've got, either modules or microcontroller boards and whatnot. And I actually want to show where I'm plugging things in and all of that. And so what I got for that is this, it's called the IPEVO Point to View, and it's a document camera. And, oftentimes if you go to like universities or places like that, they'll have these big Wolf Vision cameras. And I got to tell you, I've never been all that terribly impressed with the resolution on those. Oftentimes the image you get is kind of washed out. Well, what this has got, it's got a little stand, right? So it's got pretty weighted stand. So it's steady, but you can adjust this to any particular angle. And then it's got mounting points. Mounting points on both the side and front here. So I can go and grab the camera, which is just a USB webcam, plug it into the stand, and then, basically angle it so that it is just right over the device that I'm trying to demonstrate. I actually used it last night. For the first time ever, I actually did a presentation at a Google developer user group. And they didn't throw anything at me or throw me out of the building, so I guess I must have done okay. I had actually picked up a Nexus 7 tablet because rather than, emulators tend to be a little suboptimal for demo purposes. So I decided I'm going to go with hardware. And so this really comes in handy when you're trying to demo on an actual hardware device.
Yeah, not to mention, you just wanted the gadget in both cases.
Well, yeah. Any excuse I have to buy a gadget is usually a good excuse. The cool part about this, it's $60 on Amazon right now. And that's about what I paid for it a couple of years ago. And it gets, I think, up to 25 something by 1600 resolution max. So you can get really high resolution. Does a great job. So if you do any demos with respect to phones, or you just need a decent document camera, I've actually used this to take pictures of my expense reports before I send them via email. So it's like a multi-purpose gadget. Definitely.
I always sit there with my camera or my phone, and I take pictures of the receipts that way and send them up, and it's just like, what a pain.
Yeah, I've done that too. But this one, because I can kind of set it over a stable surface, I typically get better pictures, more clear resolution. That way the beam counters don't come after me and say, I can't read what this says. You're going to have to resubmit.
Yeah. So I've got one of their cameras. Mine is black and has a smaller flat top on it, which I was using for Gadgeteer demos and phone demos and stuff like that. And it works extremely well. I definitely recommend their phones, their cameras for that kind of work.
Cool. Yeah.
So
cool.
Cool.
And the software, the nice thing is the software is available on their website for their viewer, and I've yet to have it, knock wood, cause any problems with any of my other demo stuff. And that's one of the things I always worry a little bit about when I'm doing demos is adding any piece of software can occasionally cause havoc with your demo funds. So you do have to be thoughtful about that.
Yeah.
But it's a good deal. So you said there was something kind of frustrating you a little bit, I think. Was there something you wanted to kind of get off your chest?
Let's talk about that in a second. I want to talk about having spent some more money again.
Spent more again?
Of course. So my machine currently has 12 gigs of memory in it. And especially when I'm doing the live streaming here, I'm routinely running at about 80% of capacity, right?
Nice.
So everybody tells me, it's like, oh, 12 gigs. Why would you ever need 12 gigs of memory and stuff like that? I'm like, look, I'm using like 11 on a regular basis here, right? So finally, I got a set of 24 gigs, right? All matched, because they have to be matched. If they're not matched, you run into all sorts of issues when you start getting up into the higher capacity stuff here, especially if you do any sort of overclocking at all, which is hard enough with 24 gigs. So I'm really psyched. I'm going to be putting this in there. It was one of those things where I was looking to upgrade a few things on my motherboard. I'm like, all right, so I can upgrade the memory, all right, and then I get a new video card. And then you start thinking, should I just upgrade the processor and the motherboard? It gets out of hand. So I cut myself off. I decided I'll get the new memory. I've got a new SSD, which I'm going to be using here for installing 8.1 shortly. I've got 2 3 terabyte spinning Rust drives that are going to be RAID 1, the mirroring on that says my secondary drive, all my data and all that kind of stuff. So, and I also got video cards to help drive this puppy behind me here that we'll talk about in a little bit. So that was one cool thing. I'm excited. September 15th is my favorite day in the world. Yeah.
So you've really been spending. I actually have not.
Well, that makes me sound irresponsible.
Well,
yes, I have.
You like your toys. I do. So actually, I have been kind of holding back a little bit. So I like September 15th too. I'm just really trying to decide sort of. I don't know if it's this way in your household, but there's a certain amount of. I don't know if convincing is the right word, or spending of husband points necessary for certain acquisitions or acquisitions above a certain threshold. So I've been really wanting to get the Lumia 1020 just because of the amazingly bad you-know-what camera. And I don't mean bad in negative sense. I mean bad with a bad word after it because, as you've noted, I don't cuss very much.
That's right, Andy.
But 41 megapixels is really, really appealing. Unfortunately, neither of my lines have upgrades, so I'm staring at $649 or $699, whatever the off-contract price is, which I'm really tempted, but I've been kind of holding back because I'm also kind of looking in 3D printer land, and as we've talked about, I really have been wanting to pick up the Korg MicroStation, kind of all-in-one keyboard, and then. Korg keeps releasing new and different stuff like the MS-20. There's all kinds of like lust-worthy stuff they're doing. Yeah, I know. Yeah, maybe
Jealous?
when you get bored with it, I can buy it off you used.
There you go. It is. It's all ADDD. ADDD. It's that echo again.
Squirrel.
So you know how I hear myself, like half a second after I talk. So I talked to Wirecast about that. I'm like, hey, can I just mute the monitoring of one channel of input? Like, wow, that's a really good idea. Put in a feature request. It's like, oh! I'm sure many of you will have had similar experiences with other companies.
But we are grateful to them for a relatively inexpensive way to make this show possible.
Yeah. Sorry, I was on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Jeff was on. All right, so here's the other funny thing. I've had this for a little bit. I got it for my son because he likes zombies. But he looked at it and said, Papa, that's too gross. I don't want it. Here, you can have it back. Which is saying something. But if any of you babies or remember these little Pat the Bunny books, right? This is Pat the Zombie. Pat the Zombie. You can get this on Amazon. And what I really like is it's got stuff. It starts off, here are Paul and Judy. They can survive lots of things. You can survive lots of things too, but you probably won't.
So
and then
I'm trying to remember, the original Pat the Bunny, didn't it have like the bunny fur?
Yes, and this does too. Look,
that has
Judy
texture?
can gut the zombie. Now you gut the zombie. And so it's got like a little
it's
flap
got zombie
here
guts
with like guts in it. Let's see.
So
Paul can search the remains. Now you search the remains.
I can see why your son might not have thought that was.
I'm not known for having the best judgment when it comes to stuff like this with my kids.
And what did your wife have to say about this one?
She went, oh, with that sort of wifely, the
nice.
Go ahead. You'll regret it later, but go ahead. All right.
Really?
All right, no, go ahead.
No, I could just see your wife saying, "Really, Pete? Really?"
Yeah. She does say that a lot. And then, so for folks, T-shirt today. Let's see if I can get that in.
Tron and Space Invaders mashup. I love it.
Exactly.
Recognizer Invaders.
I was gonna say, do you recognize the shirt?
I see what you did there.
Yeah. Anyway. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was pretty lame.
Hey, so you mentioned something I was getting annoyed with. Right.
What's that?
Yeah, you had mentioned something I was getting annoyed with. So let me just throw this out there so I can be a hater. Let me go this.
Haters gonna hate.
Haters gonna hate, and I hate. All right. I've gotten a lot of tweets
you did
and
hear,
email
by the way,
and for other folks.
I'm interrupting you.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm interrupting you. You did hear, by the way, that there was a study that showed that hate travels faster on the internet than positive stuff. So this should definitely make our show audience grow.
Excellent. I'm not surprised at the outcome of that. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So there's this thing called phone blocks, which on the surface of it looks really innovative and really cool. And if you know absolutely nothing about electronics, it looks like, wow, why aren't phone companies doing this? They must be trying to screw us. They don't want to make upgradable phones. Clearly, they just want the money, which I'm not going to necessarily disagree with that, but I don't believe it's the reason phones are designed the way they are. And the premise of this is he goes in and says, hey, phones are not upgradable. They are impossible to, like, if something breaks in it, you can't fix them, et cetera. All the problems that you hear about. And I think those are legitimate gripes, right? The solution, however, is presented as a set of interconnectable blocks that attach to some common board here and make it possible for you to interchange, say, like a battery with different kinds of sensors and upgrade the processor and upgrade different types of communication, all that kind of stuff, etc.
That sounds really awesome.
It does. And it even looks pretty nifty too. And he has a video with a kind of mocked up prototype, etc., etc. Really cool design study. absolute zero grounding in real world electronics, right? There is nothing about this that could be reasonably implemented anytime before we go, say, 100% optical for communication between chips or something like that.
Right.
It shows to me somebody who, despite their opening video where they show the inside of electronics, has no idea just how much of the functionality is contained on individual chips, how chips typically communicate with each other, how, like, say, the main processor integrates with the screen, integrates with Bluetooth, et cetera, right? And there are some people who have taken it upon themselves to help debunk some of this. And we sound like we're just being crusty old men, right? You know, like, why are you hating on this?
Speak for yourself. I'm not old.
Or you're just crusty. But it sounds like people are just hating on it.
Right.
But the problem is, this has millions of likes and views and stuff like this. And it's starting a movement where the people are thinking like, oh, the phone companies are just out to screw this. This is perfectly acceptable technology. Look in the video. He has a prototype. It shows it works. But it's all smoke and mirrors, right? There's nothing real about this. I can tell you that to do this in anything that's even remotely phone-sized and something that even remotely performs like current phones do today is just patently impossible. So anyway, I had to get that off my chest.
All right, so here's an interesting question. So I agree with you, and I read some of what you've written, discussion of this idea, and just the size that the phone would have to be, and the inefficiencies in terms of power and signal routing. But to play devil's advocate, how about this idea?
Sure.
All of that stuff that's on the website there, that's all broken up, just stick that in a headless device in your pocket and use WiDi or Miracast to pass the display to a handset that is solely touch and screen and nothing else. Touch screen and battery and nothing else.
Yeah, if you want to carry a brick in your pocket with all this stuff. No, seriously. I actually think that's a cool idea. I would go one further. I would love to carry all the guts in my pocket. Oh, going back to the zombie references there.
Yeah, exactly. Guts in your pocket.
All the guts in my pocket. And have a brain implant. Seriously, that just like pumps the information directly to and from my brain, right? We're not quite there yet either.
Want to be Borg.
I would actually be kind of into that. Until the first virus comes through, and then we really do turn into zombies.
And back to the zombies again.
Yes. So anyway, if you see down here at the bottom, for example, they've got the battery taking the place of where some other things were, because you can get a double-sized battery and whatnot. I would love to see the routing on this pegboard here that could make something like that even remotely possible. Or every single one of these modules has the equivalent of USB or some kind of spy type stuff built into it, which is very inefficient, right? And requires a lot more logic and costs a lot more on each and every one of those modules.
Oh, but the part that you're missing here is that's actual pegboard in the picture. The actual phone is about 2 feet by 3 feet. So that's how he makes it all work and makes sure that there's plenty of space for all the components and the reusability. The battery is like a 15,000 milliamp hour. You charge it from your car, with jumper cables kind of thing. Actually, if you want, you can use it to jumpstart your car. So
this is the part that kills me.
And I mean, if you look at the picture with the hiker guy, it shows you exactly how big the phone is. So that's to scale.
It's backpack size. But if you look at the reach on this, and this, I'm not saying this because I'm jealous. I just feel like it's spreading misinformation about what technology can and cannot do. I mean, 269 million people. First of all, I don't know how they calculate that reach. That's like, all the entire population. What's the population of the U.S.? 400,000?
It's a little over 300,000, I think.
300 million.
Or 300 million. 300,000.
There you go.
Let's just throw a few zeros around.
There. So this is basically reached the equivalent of almost everybody in the U.S. and who have seen this and said it's an awesome idea and everything.
And anyway, since not all of them have internet access, it couldn't be everyone in the U.S.
It's bizarre. But again, as a design exercise, I think this is super cool. I actually like the look of the device that you
Right.
came up with. It's very attractive. It's very well designed visually. Conceptually, what a cool idea. Just anytime within the next 10 years, completely unlikely. And the thing is, something like this, even if possible in 10 years, will always be way behind the current state-of-the-art technology. I mean, thinness is a feature right now, and this goes exactly opposite that. Anyway, that's my rant.
All right. So basically, based on this, should I assume that you're probably not going to be picking up a phablet anytime soon? If
I hear that
thinness is a
word
feature
again,
for
I'm
you?
going to murder somebody. Because phablet is just, no. You won't catch me.
I think it's supposed to be a play on PHAT, fat.
No, it's supposed to be phone and tablet.
Well,
and fabulous and
I think fat is
and
in
all
there
this.
too.
And yeah.
But, yeah.
Hey, welcome to 1996.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I mean, I think that there's something to be said for cool concepts, and I don't know that I'm entirely with you that he's spreading technical misinformation. I think he's spreading his
There's no
dream.
evil here. There's no evil here.
Right. I think it's, hey, this is a dream concept. And the reality is that, people who know a little bit about technology will probably realize this is not very realistic. And the people who don't know enough about technology to know better, honestly, it's not going to matter, I don't think. There are a lot, odd that people believe that aren't true.
Yeah. Yeah. But, for example, this statement right here on his site, when is it ready? And it basically says, when companies think it's a good idea, they'll do it, right? He's missing the fact that it's just not possible.
Right.
And that's what really annoys. It's, again, he's putting it on the phone companies, saying like, hey, look at this awesome idea. The only reason the phone companies aren't doing this is they're trying to screw you.
That's very silly. But the cool, I guess I keep coming back to, if you think about some of the people who've invented really awesome stuff over the history of the human race, lots of them did things that were thought impossible, right? I'm not saying that this guy has got,
but I didn't disagree with them.
Impossible,
and so I personally disagreed with them, and that's a differentiator here.
So if you had personally disagreed with, I don't know, Edison.
Let's not get started on Tesla versus
invented.
Edison. No. Let's not go there.
Let's not get you started on that rant. I'm sure that would be pretty epic.
Yes.
So.
All right. So enough on that.
So.
I hope I've garnered some true internet viral hate. Again, back to the zombies. And then.
Zombies.
All right. So let's change topics to something that is totally doable today.
Okay. Sounds good.
So you and I have different views on what we like about displays, I think. No pun intended.
Views? I see what you did there.
Stop. It was not deliberate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I tend to have, I like big screens. I have two 30-inch screens right here in front of me. Yes. Oh, Andrew, you're going to pay for this later. I have two 30-inch screens. They each run 2560 by 1600. I'm about 2 feet away from the screen. And so I run them at native resolution, 100% DPI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is not enough pixels for me. It's also not, like, I don't like having the bezel in the way and having it wrapped around, all that kind of stuff. So I'm always looking for new display technology. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting is something that came out years ago. It's like 2009. And it was this idea of these wraparound displays, right? And so these wraparound displays, and Andrew, I'm showing the Tech Zone link that I had in the notes there. This is something from 2009. Form factor is pretty sweet. Through some clever camera angles on here, you don't see the fact that it's about a foot deep because it's a rear projection screen. I'm not going anywhere near a rear projection screen on my computer. That's just crap display. It's like, no way. and it's also fairly low resolution. I think it's 2880 by 900, excuse me. So it's about the same resolution as a chunk of my 30-inch screen. But I love that it just wraps around here in front of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been looking. There are other similar things that have been coming out. So Dell has started to come out with and they're not the only one, this new format of display, which is quite a bit wider than the typical HD style display, but it's shorter. So this is roughly the same width as my 30-inch screen, but it's about the height of a typical, HD, like 22 or 23-inch screen or something like that, right?
Right.
So what do you think of this form factor, though?
Well, so I mean, I remember when that panoramic screen was was originally teased, and the rear projection thing, it doesn't, it's got kind of a crappy washed out picture, but the concept I really liked a lot, and in fact that's actually how I have my setup in my office. I've actually got, so I'm not going to bother grabbing my webcam and kind of showing it off just because it's my office is so messy. I don't even want to show my
dirty
desktop at all.
Underwear in a corner and all sorts of stuff.
No, nothing like that. So I have like a 19-inch Westinghouse on my left over this way, and it's on an articulating arm that's clamped to my desk. I've got a 22-inch widescreen Samsung to the center, and then I have an 18-inch Mitsubishi in portrait mode on my right. And that's also on an articulating arm. So I have essentially that kind of panoramic view because the two side monitors are angled in.
Yep.
Now, the funny part is, prior to the Samsung, I actually had a 37-inch LCD TV, 1080p LCD TV as my center monitor. And that was great because I'm not as much of a pixel fetish guy as you are. You seem to have this thing about
those pixels
more
are
pixels,
the size
more
of erasers
pixels
on that screen.
Well, that may be, but for doing stuff in Visual Studio, it was great for not having to have my reading glasses on to write code. So 37-inch LCD is awesome for writing code, but the thing was like having a space heater in my office. And in summertime, that's really unpleasant.
That's the real problem with these 30-inch Dells I have. They're one model old, so they're not the LED backlit. They're like, CF. I don't know what it is, but it's something that produces a lot of heat, some kind of fluorescent lighting or something. And when I'm recording this podcast, I have to have my office door shut, and so I'm not getting any airflow from the rest of the house, and I'm slowly baking here while I'm doing this.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem.
It's good for the complexion. It's good for the complexion. You get all this stuff. But I have a similar setup to you. So everybody hold on to your seats for a second. You're probably going to Ralph here, but I'm going to move the camera. And you get to see close up of my forehead.
Oh, you've got a Gorilla Pod. I like that.
Yeah, I've got, here's the two screens. You see them side by side. Oh, everybody, there. All right. So let's get kind of mostly. Yeah, something like, the camera never goes back exactly the same way. But that's okay. So I've got these two like that. The only reason I don't have a third one over here is I've got too much other junk right here.
Right.
But anyway, so for people who don't have that kind of display and don't want quite the large space heater, here in front, and also want to be able to see over their display. Like I can't see over this unless I sit way up, which if there's a door behind you, especially if you're in an office, you want to be able to see over people or see over your screen so you can see who's wandering in. For those types of situations, I really think this this panoramic style could be the next big thing.
So in this case, are you talking about the older one or the Dell that you were...
So the older one is going to require flexible screens, right?
Yeah, but the Dell is panoramic in the sense that it's super widescreen.
Yeah,
but it doesn't give you that kind of wraparound experience.
Right.
And I think that matters because if I'm looking at my portrait screen, I can actually pivot my chair and be straight onto it. Whereas if my total screen width was all flat, I'd really end up just having to kind of crane my neck, and I suspect that I'd end up with more visits to the chiropractor on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a limit as to how wide you can get when it's still just straight flat display. So I've heard about flexible OLED at some point, but then nobody's talking about that anymore. But there was the idea that you could make large OLED screens that would like sort of flex and
so I actually thought there were some TVs that were recently announced this year at CES, or maybe it was, I don't know if it was CES but one of the big shows. Might have been the German electronics show that was either last week or the week before. I think there are a couple of manufacturers that actually announced curved OLED TVs, and they're phenomenally expensive. But I think that those are actually starting to become available.
So so phenomenally expensive is a good segue into the next part of this. So you're starting to hear more about 4K, and it's kind of funny because. It was either my mother or my wife's response was, "Oh, so that new TV I've just got is going to be like obsolete here in a couple of years." I'm like, "Of course it will be."
No, but nobody needs more than 1080 lines of vertical resolution.
Oh, Andrew. So here you can see it's so. Let me.
I'm going to be the TV Luddite.
Yes, I like big screens, and I like lots of pixels, and that's really all I can say about that. But so here's a comparison on it's on Wikipedia here. It shows you the different, on their 4K article, it shows you how 1080p compares to like 4K. And if you look, 1080p is 1/4 the resolution of 4K, right?
Which is why they call it 4K, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, because it's not exactly 4K. The resolution is 3840 by... what's that? 2160, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So 1080p will give you like 4 times that, or 4 times 1080p. Excuse me. Right. What I like about this is if you get those 4K screens in a small enough size, you don't have to worry about you running it at native resolution, but you can run it at higher DPI, right? And so that'll give you clearer text and much crisper images. Tablets and laptops and stuff are really starting to get up there into the high DPI stuff, like what Apple calls their Retina. But that's just a marketing name, right? There's plenty of other examples of that out there.
Sure.
But these 4K resolutions or all these high DPI displays really haven't hit the desktop. It seems like once HD TV became popular, every LCD panel made was 1920 by 1080, regardless of how big or small it was. There are a few exceptions, like the Dell 30s here, but you had to pay dearly for these. So, like each of these Dells was just over $1,000 to get this, and just to get the additional pixels, because they don't have the same kind of broad runs that you get for anything that's going to be able to support consumer TV. Right. So everything being 1920 was like really getting on my nerves, because I feel like it was a step back. So, but 4K here is starting to become the next big thing with more pixels. More pixels. Give me all. I want all the pixels.
All the pixels. All your pixels belong to us.
Yes. And so the devices that have been coming out with this on there are, of course, ridiculously expensive right away.
Right.
Last year, 4K TVs were $20,000. This year, they're starting to come down more. There is one 4K computer monitor, specifically for computers, that is, I think, just under $4,000. And it's still, like, I can't justify $4,000 on a screen, right?
But why not? You need all the pixels.
I do, but I also need all the money. So $4,000 is a bit expensive, but this will come down. One of the things that's holding up adoption here is regular HDMI connections are bandwidth and resolution limited, where they can't do 60 hertz at 4K resolutions with HDMI 1.4, right? The HDMI 2.0 spec is designed to allow 60 hertz, 4K resolutions, right?
Well, so I guess a more basic question is, what about content?
It's not just about content. So
well,
if you're looking at it from a TV standpoint, yes, we'll need more 4K content once that comes out.
Right.
There's some 4K content on YouTube of all places, through their special site on that. But right now, electronic delivery of 4K content is not something you really want to do, regardless of how big the pipe is.
Yeah.
It's just nuts, right?
Right.
But it's sort of like saying, oh, who's ever going to have content for HD TV? But it's been showing up. Like all the Blu-ray stuff out there. Most of the channels that I get through cable right now are HD.
Right.
Everything else. So everybody's converted to HD. They're going to start converting more to 4K over time. I don't know when that time is. But honestly, I don't really watch any TV, so I don't care about that. What I am more interested in is being able to use the display for coding. I know some people are into it for gaming, but I game on the console, not on my PC. But coding, just web surfing, all the normal work that I do here, I just use web surfing and said it was work. All that kind of normal stuff that I do here, I just want more pixels to be able to display it.
So wait, you get paid to surf the internet?
No, I don't. No. So I did find a very inexpensive 4K display, but there's a hitch.
Okay.
The hitch is because it uses HDMI, it's limited to a 30 hertz refresh at its full 4K resolution. So what that means is if you're gaming or something, forget it. Don't use it for gaming. It's going to have too much ghosting, and it's not going to update in a way that feels natural to you.
Right.
I agonized over this one for a little bit, but in the end, the fact that this TV was cheap enough, relatively speaking, compared to all these other displays, won out. Ended up getting one. It's sitting here behind me, but I'm waiting for the video cards to drive it, which will be here this afternoon. So let me pull up that one. So this is, and the brand name is some Psyche, who knows, whatever, right?
Yeah, I'd never actually heard of that before.
Yeah, neither have I. And so some people have been using it as displays. I have here on Amazon the user photos of it, show some people using them. Surprisingly, most of the people doing that are Linux users, which I just found interesting.
Yeah, I read some of those and the tips for getting it actually to sync properly, and there's some pretty arcane stuff in there.
Yeah. It wasn't go into this dialogue and right click on stuff. It was like go and edit these and add a long string of random stuff. But it's been a long time since I did any kind of configuration of at the time it was like X windows and things like that. But anyway, so it seems like if you can live with a 30 hertz refresh, which means that animations might be a little stuttered just for the display, not for performance of them. This might be a really great display for coding, for just doing all the normal types of work that you would do. And so what I've decided to do is I'm going to have it as my secondary display for now and see how well I like that. And if I like it enough, I'll make it my primary. And then also, 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, whenever it is that real 4K computer monitors become official, then that'll be relegated to some sort of a backup display. Because I've been wanting to have a display behind me with like project information and other stuff that I can just refer to, as I go out my day. So
I don't even want to think about what your,
huh?
Yeah, I don't even want to think about what your electric bill must look like, because that's just like insane amounts of power. So
actually,
here's my question.
Once I get rid of my server rack, my power consumption way down. So everything here is like bonus at this point.
Okay, well, that's sort of obvious. You're running a whole server rack in your basement. Now, question for you: reach around back behind you, and that sucker's been on for a little while. Is it warm?
Not at all.
No, it's up at the top. Up at the top.
No,
is where the heat we usually vent.
Cold.
Really? Because
a little bit of heat right over here.
Yeah, because I can reach up, and even all three of my monitors, I can feel the heat coming off of them. I mean, it's not a tremendous amount, but it's enough to warm the room.
Yeah, I can cook a steak on top of this Dell, right? That one, not so much. So I have an image on this, though. Let me see if I can pull it up. So I don't have it hooked up to the PC, but I just have a USB stick in it. Invalid file. Here. what I wanted to do. Pause that. And let me bring the throw up cam again. And I'll explain what this is afterwards. So let's see. There we go. So that is Visual Studio. Oh, come on. White belt. Oh, there we are. Oh, perfect. There we are. And okay, good. Anyway, just having fun with everybody's
And there goes
stomachs.
another viewer.
Yes. So that was a screenshot of Visual Studio running at my native resolution of my 30-inch display, which is 2560 by 1600. And I took that and put it in a 4K size bitmap and loaded it up on here so you can see how much more real estate you're getting, how many more pixels you're getting, I should say, versus just the straight 30-inch display. Now, to be determined, are the pixels any good? I hate fuzzy pixels. How legible is it? The DPI is just slightly higher than the 30s, so I think size will probably be okay, but I'm going to double check. And then just, how is the color balance and all this kind of stuff, right? I mean, it's a cheap TV. I bought it just because of the pixel count, but I don't know
under
how
$1,000, right?
Yeah, so it's $699.
Which is, that's, I think, less than I paid for my Vizio 1080p TV.
Yeah, it's $699 from Amazon. I have Prime, so it got here in 2 days. Not in this browser, I don't. I have Prime, so it got here in 2 days. Now, what you do need to do, though, is you need to make sure you have a video card that's powerful enough to drive it, right? So they're $699, and then almost certainly you're upgrading your video card. Most video cards max out at the resolution of a 30-inch screen, unless they're really modern discrete cards.
So a question for you. Are you running multiple video cards, or are you running a single multi-headed video card?
Right now, I'm running a single multi-headed card. It's a NVIDIA GTX 570. Yes.
Okay.
I ordered 2 cards.
Okay. Because the trick for me has always been I like to have 3 monitors, and it took me a while to find one that would drive all 3. And what I ended up doing is like one's on VGA, one's on HDMI, and one's on DVI. So I've got different communication for each of the monitors. And inevitably that, you end up sacrificing some quality that way. But I really didn't want to have to try to drive 2 video cards off of my desktop machine.
Yeah. So the new NVIDIA cards will natively support 3 displays per card, right? They all have DisplayPort, HDMI, DVI-D, and DVI-I, which are the 2 DVI standpoints. Or 2 standards, excuse me, and they support 3 displays, and they'll support 4K type resolution, right? So those are all the important things there. So I ordered 2 770s, which is not the top of the line. They have, I forget what they have a top of the line brick, which is just it's like $1,000 per card. I never end up getting that. Then they have the 780s, which I think are about $6 something a card. I didn't get that. The 770s, which are another step down from that, are somewhere around $300 to $400 per card. It's still expensive, but they're probably about as low as you reasonably want to go if you're driving 4K plus some other ones here. So what's to be determined is, do I use 2 cards in SLI and have all the outputs come out of 1 card, or do I end up having card drive the 4K and the other card drives the 230s here? So that's to be determined. The reason I didn't just order another card is past experience has told me with NVIDIA cards, mixing and matching models
not happy.
Just not a good. Yeah.
I actually did the cross the stream things by having ATI and NVIDIA in the same machine all at once, which is what led me to go look for a card that I could drive all 3 monitors from a single card, because was that a painful experience.
Yeah.
Not pretty.
And ATI's had the leg up on the multi-monitor thing for a while, but NVIDIA finally caught on to that. Yeah. And I know this is a religious thing. ATI, though, I had such bad luck with their drivers early on, I would just never touch ATI cards again. Okay.
So
That's that.
quick
I'll post some more information about the 4K display once it's up, and if I hate it or if I love it or anything like that, I'll put up a blog post so people can see more about it.
Cool. Now, so here's something, just a slight diversion on this topic. What's your take on the thing that drives me crazy about purchasing video cards is that there's so many sort of badges of the NVIDIA or ATI GPUs. So I'm looking at the Amazon site, and I'm seeing EVGA, Gigabyte, MSI, PNY, Asus. There's all these different manufacturers, and what you see when you go and like if you go to Anantech and look at the reviews of the video cards, what you get is sort of the base GPU coming directly from the manufacturer. And then it's like, well, this one looks cheaper. This one has slightly different specs. It's like, how is a normal person who doesn't, geek out like you do on pixels supposed to figure out what the best video card is for them?
Yeah, and that's really hard because they're all also almost the same price. They're all within like $20 of each other.
Right.
What I did do is I read a bunch of Newegg reviews, which helps.
Do that too.
Amazon reviews, you're going to get a larger cross-section of the population, and I'd rather hear what the geeks have to say, so I tend to go to Newegg for that, right? The other thing I looked at is, what are the differentiators? I ended up getting the Asus cards this time. I've always been an EVGA guy, just because I've had good luck with them. But I was told from multiple comments, or I read in multiple comments in different places, that the new Asus card just has better cooling, runs quieter, runs quite a bit cooler, etc. And to me, with all the other heat going on in here, I thought that was a pretty good differentiator. But yeah, it's hard to find out. Hey, we have a little bit of time left, and I want to talk a bit about... do you want to do a little on touchscreens here?
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll go into the other stuff?
Yeah.
Right?
That sounds great.
So I have up here the Amazon link you'd sent me for the ViewSonic touchscreen.
Right.
As just one of the possible touchscreens out there. So I've been looking a lot into touch and specifically touchscreen latency and things like that for, because I work with musicians a lot, and for them, being able to tap on the glass and then hear audio as quickly as possible is a big deal. Right. And there are a couple of different factors that come in on that. One is audio latency on the platform itself, right? But the second one that most people don't really think a whole lot about is like touchscreen latency. So I've been talking with the product team who really kind of schooled me on the requirements for this, because I was like, hey, I've tried these different devices. The latency is obviously different between them, and you can tell these guys really care a lot about latency on touchscreens and what's considered good and what should be better and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And what I learned from that, there's a min spec to be hardware certified on Windows 8, and that the path from touching your finger on the screen all the way through to getting the Windows message that it's like a pointer event has to be 25 milliseconds or less, right?
Okay.
Now that sounds like a lot, but there are lots of manufacturers who have done a lot better than that. But if you think if you said it needs to be 6 milliseconds every single time, then you're not going to find a $200 touchscreen out there, and touch isn't going to take off for the majority of people who are going to use it just to tap icons and stuff on the screen.
Right.
But for the musicians, they want to look at the touchscreen latency for specific devices. So not every manufacturer quotes them.
Right.
So for example, I don't know that ViewSonic does, but I did look, for example, at the 3M touchscreens, which routinely run about $1,100 each. Those quote 6 milliseconds of latency.
Wow.
Which is quite a bit better than 25, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're using an older touchscreen, like pre-Windows 8, like not certified for Windows 8, you could see 100 milliseconds of latency or even more, right?
Which would be just insane. I can imagine.
Okay, for normal use.
Right, but notwithstanding the music scenario, one of the things that I've experienced. So I love touch. I've got touch on I've got a Lenovo Carbon X1 Touch. It's great for doing taps. It's great for doing gestures. but I've got like it's a capacitive screen. It doesn't have a stylus. So I tried using a capacitive pen and using that to draw, and it just that particular scenario, you can't get the responsiveness from the capacitive pen to do drawing accurately, right? Whereas something like the Surface Pro or the devices that have the Wacom digitizer with the pen, it's a much, much better drawing experience,
right?
Which is, it's kind of both scenarios I think are important. Touch can be a very intuitive way of manipulating what's on screen, but sometimes you want precision as well.
Yeah. And so precision is definitely very important, and I have seen the capacitive stylus and stuff like that. I haven't used one yet. I've used the stylus on my Surface Pro, and I agree that that's pretty responsive. And again, it is is because it's a separate digitizer on that.
Right.
But these ones, again, if folks are interested in the absolute lowest latency possible on these screens, understand it costs more money, right? And it's really only going to be a benefit to you if you do a lot of like, say, drawing or something on the screen with your hands, music performance or stuff, where you're really going to notice that something is lagging behind you, right?
Right.
The second part of latency, so that's one part, right? The second part is just the API stack and how the developer implements their touch handling. So, for example, if you do touch handling in XAML, and maybe you do too much stuff on the UI thread or something, you might see more lag in the touch than you would be if you did something in, say, DirectX and had much more lower level, painting on the screen.
Right.
So that's at least worth looking at when you're out there shopping for a touch screen. In general, the ones that are integrated into device, I think, tend to perform really well because they have more of a direct path there anyway. But again, it's worth checking to see if there are quoted numbers, and also just trying it yourself and see how you like it.
Now, you had mentioned there are differences in technologies involved in touch. So, resistive touch is kind of the older style. Like, if you ever had a Windows mobile phone, the previous generation, the 6X or whatever, those were mostly resistive touch, and you'd use a stylus. Capacitive is sort of the standard on phones today. So, whether it's an iPhone or a Windows phone or whatever else, all of those are capacitive.
Capacitive or projected capacitive, which is two sort of variations on the same thing. But projective capacitive will give you even more immediate feedback. As I understand it, and really I'm talking out my ear here, it's the projective capacitive stuff it looks more immediate too. Oop, what was that? Bizarre. Okay. Anyway, I just got a little weird bing over here back behind me.
Okay.
So there's so resistive touch is like all the microcontroller screens that we use that have a little plastic overlay on them. That's resistive touch. There's the optical stuff, remember the old HPs that had two touch points?
Yep.
And they had a thick bezel around them, and they were actually projecting beams in there to tell when your finger broke that beam, or some had a camera in each corner depending upon how it was implemented. I hate those because you break the beam before you physically touch the screen, and it's very disconcerting for me because I found I tend to hover pretty close to the screen. Right.
And so you get no warning that when you're kind of hovering, trying to figure out where you're going to send this. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what the Bing is. Sorry, that was me. I accidentally dragged an image into Skype, and it's trying to send it to you. I'll just cancel that.
All right, thanks.
My fault.
And no worries. So again, take a look at these screens and just understand that they're not all created equal, and try to learn a little bit about, depending upon your use and your budget, of course, which one's going to be the right kind of touchscreen for you. So I'm seriously considering sometime in 2014, I'm not going to do it this year, I don't think, getting a touchscreen for my desktop, but I'm thinking of getting a slightly smaller one, so somewhere 22 inches or so, something like that, and mounting it into the desk between my keyboard and my screen. And that way I can have a touch controller there as well as all these other displays. It's got to look like a cockpit. I'm just
it's going to look interesting. I'll give you that. So an alternative to that, however, which is quite a lot less expensive. Windows 8 is here. Windows 8.1 right around the corner. There's a lot of focus on touch there, and one of the things you mentioned is that expensive touch monitors for desktop machines probably going to make it a little, that's not going to necessarily make touch adoption great on the desktop. But one of the things that one of my new toys that I got yesterday, actually, in fact, that actually does some interesting stuff around touch, both for Windows 7 as well as for Windows 8, and maybe the single simplest installation of a device that I've ever experienced. I mean, like seriously ever, is I picked up a bamboo pad. It's called Bamboo Pad, and it's essentially a touchpad. I'm kind of showing it here, and Pete's turned around.
Yep.
So it's
I've got you on full screen.
Right? It's a touchpad, and it works with touch. It has a little bar at the bottom here that you can use to do left and right click for mouse. Now, this is cool enough. This is, as you can tell, there's no wires hanging off this. So it's wireless, which means if I want to use it as a touchpad next to my keyboard or next to my laptop, I can use it that way very easily. It's super easy to stow in a bag. It's probably about, 6-7 inches by 5 inches or so. I haven't looked at the specs. But it's, a decent size, but not so big that it can't fit in my laptop bag. But what makes this thing really nifty, apart from the fact that it's wireless, is
Can you hold that up and let's see the side? What's the profile look like?
Profile is very thin.
Put it horizontal because you're getting clipped.
Oh, sorry.
Up.
It's very thin, right? Yep. It's like blade thin. And it runs on 2 AA batteries, which they say should be good for about 4 weeks. So, all right, so I've got that. But it also has a stylus.
Oh,
right?
Nice.
So this works as a bamboo drawing pad. Now, I already had a Bamboo Fun tablet that I got probably 3-4 years ago, which is kind of a lot chunkier, and it actually came with its own mouse. And I no longer use the mouse that came with it, even though it's plugged into my desktop, because for some reason they put like some kind of felt or fabric, and it just got totally filled with schmutz. I mean, it's just gross. I mean, I don't even want to touch it. It's so gross. But that's what I used to use. Like if I needed to crop something out of a photo and I needed that kind of precision, that tablet is what I used. Well, now I've got something that gives me touch on non-touch devices, and it understands Windows 8 gestures, so I can do things like swipe in from the edge of the touchpad. I can do 3 fingers down to get to the desktop, 3 fingers up to get to the start menu. All of the kinds of gestures that you'd expect. And then when I want to go into something like, say, Fresh Paint or Inkscape or something like that, where I want to draw something with precision, I've got, I don't know if it's 256 or 512 levels of pressure sensitivity. So I actually get the brushes in Fresh Paint to respond like brushes. And I'm by no means an artist, but having that kind of precision control available in a really tiny package. And this guy goes for, I think, $79. And if you're willing to put up with the wired version, you can get it for $20 cheaper. It's a pretty good deal, and I really like it so far. Only gripe I've got right now is it uses a USB dongle. So although it's wireless, it does take up a USB port. I would have loved to have seen like a Bluetooth version, but my guess is that Bluetooth might introduce enough latency issues that would be painful to use.
Mostly it'd be the battery, I think. Bluetooth is not so great on battery compared to some of these other wireless things these guys are using. I think so that would be my guess, and also just the expense of the Bluetooth chipset.
Right.
Probably the 2 main reasons.
Yeah,
I would be tempted myself to go for the USB version of that, and the reason is I've got this Logitech touchpad, which is let's see. What? I'm like backwards. Here we go. Oh, there we are. I've got this one, but I keep it plugged in all the time because its Bluetooth charge for this rechargeable battery is good for about a day.
Right.
And that's worthless to me. I just keep it plugged in.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll see. Time will tell how much, how long this thing lasts on 2 AA batteries. It came with. Usually, you get these gadgets that come with batteries in the box, and there's some really bizarre no-name Chinese off-brand, and you kind of throw them in the trash or you might throw them in the trash, but you might be afraid they might catch fire in the trash or something. So
the stuff McDonald's rejected from Happy Meal toys,
this actually had Fujitsu branded batteries, which I never had a clue that they made batteries. So go figure. So I used those, and we'll
correctly?
see how long it lasts.
It wasn't like Fujitsu, right? No,
it was not PHOO.
Yeah.
But so far, I'm less than 24 hours into using it. But I really like it. I like the ability of it. The USB dongle I could do without. The other thing is it goes to sleep after a while, which I guess it does to preserve battery. And so sometimes, when I go to touch it, it doesn't respond immediately. And then once it wakes up, it's fine. I'm hoping that maybe there'll be some update to the driver at some point that'll, maybe make that happen a little faster. I'm crossing my fingers for that. But
it's
overall,
a really nice looking device.
It is, and that's the other thing is it's snazzy looking, and the silver version is the one I got, which I really like. They've got it in several colors. They were a little bit too kind of play school for me, but some folks may like the colors. Like, reminds me of the original iMacs, the big egg shaped ones and the candy colors.
Yep.
But this is something I'm definitely. It will go in my go bag all the time when I'm going out to present and stuff like that.
I will be interested in hearing, maybe in a future show after you've been using it for a few weeks. Let us know how it's been working out for you, because
absolutely.
I'm interested in that. I'm always looking for a smoother experience. Like, what's the surface of that? Is it glass or is it something else?
No, it's some kind of plastic, but it's got enough drag to it. It's got a really good feel to it. I mean, the finger glides over it, but it.
How's it do with like a sweaty hand, or you just ate a sandwich kind of hand?
Well, I haven't eaten a sandwich and used it. I probably wouldn't do that because I'm not that much of a slob.
So the Logitech I have has a glass top, and if I don't, I'm not like sweating up a mess over here. But if my hands are anything except for perfectly dry, I get a lot of drag, right? Because it's such a smooth surface, and that's my biggest gripe with it is I do get that. And to the point where I need to make sure I keep sort of alcohol screen wipes on it, that I clean it every so often, and also my hand every so often, right?
Yeah, and so far, I mean, my fingers are probably slightly damp, and I'm not feeling that at all. I don't feel any real change in the tracking on it. So you should order the USB one. And
yeah, $49 is pretty cheap.
Yeah, we're towards the end of our time, but I do want to say I will do a demo. I need to get some screen sharing stuff set up on my end, but I would love to do a demo of like doing fresh paint or one of the pieces of software that uses pressure sensitivity and show that off, because it really is. I mean, for something this cheap, to have access to that kind of pressure sensitivity it's pretty awesome. And if you don't have it, I mean, I'm just going to go right out on a limb and say if you're using Windows 8 or Windows 8.1 on a non-touch machine, go spend the money and buy this, because it will give you some extra goodness that you will love to have.
That's a pretty good endorsement.
Oh,
so let me. I kind of started with a rant, so I'm going to end with a rant. All right. I've got the Logitech touchpad, and you remember when you first sent me the information about the Bamboo, I looked at the site and I said, those hands look awfully small on that Bamboo, right? Mm-hmm. And it turns out it is actually sized correctly, so it's not the same thing I thought. The Logitech, on the other hand, is, again, it's relatively darn left, right, up, down. You know what? It's like mirrored in here. Come on. I feel like an idiot. Don't mind me. Here we go.
You can't put your fingers on it.
My hand spans this whole device easily, right?
Right.
And on their website, they show this image, which is,
yes, I see
if you look, it's the size of a dinner plate, right?
Right.
And as I said, that's the smallest hand ever, right? And it reminded me, have you ever bought a kiddie pool or anything for your kids?
No, we have a community pool, so.
Okay. There's one brand of kiddie pool that if you ever go into like Target or Toys R Us or something like that, and you look at their toys, they have the little slides and the front pictures are always completely photoshopped, just like the picture here with the tiny hand, right?
Yeah.
Whole website here that's dedicated to this deceptology of these types of ads. So if you look here, the first picture shows this water park, and you see it's got like the whole neighborhood in it. And then when you get it, there's the reality. It's like the size of a bathtub. So that was the first thing that popped into my mind when I got that when I got this Logitech. So I was like, it's much smaller than it showed on those pictures, which technically I don't care, but it's just the fact that they advertised it as being like, wow, you know, it's like a 19-inch screen sitting on your desk that you're doing stuff is just wrong. And years ago, we bought a toy, like one of these inflatable things for my son, and we got it, and it was like 3 feet by 4 feet, where they show it being something that the whole neighborhood is in. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
So there. Book ended with rants. That's always a good way to do it.
Exactly.
Any closing words, Andrew?
Oh.
What are we going to... Well, actually, next week, I am going to be at Decibel in Seattle. So Windows is going to have a presence at the Decibel Festival, just like we did at MuTech. And it's really, I should talk about those at some point because they're really interesting, and they sort of fit the theme for the show. So I won't be able to be here for that.
So what you ought to do is take a video camera with you and just do a highlight reel.
Yeah. I do
and
something
push
like
that to the channel.
Post it up there. So that would be a cool thing to do. And then I will pick back up the week after that. And chances are that week we're going to do gaming tech, right?
Yeah.
So we had to bump that one out because of, we had to bump that one out because some of the people that we wanted to have involved as guests on here just weren't available this week because they're getting ready for some big internal projects and stuff. So hopefully that next one will be gaming tech. If not, we have a backlog here of about 20 other topics that we can talk about, so it might be good.
Yeah, and so we may also do some more later on input stuff. A couple of the things that we'd love to do is have Pete demo his Leap Motion live on the show. We also, I've done some interesting stuff with Connect and Gadgeteer, using Connect as an input point. So there may be still more to cover on the input front, and we certainly would welcome any suggestions or comments from our viewers, either via Twitter or on the YouTube show itself. We want to give you the show that you want, so...
And let us know if audio and all the technical things were sort of sorted out this week. We've spending a lot of time on that, and hopefully it's at least marginally better than it was the previous week. All right, so thanks, Andrew. Always good to chat with you here.
Pete.
And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And we're done.